Thanks also to all the Irish farmers, growers and fishermen who are producing foods of the highest possible standards. Foods and ingredients that we're using in these recipes. Welcome back to my series of cookery classes. Today we've got coq au vin, which is a traditional French dish. Over the years, down through history, the French would have made this using very old cockerels and chickens and old hens. These days we have a wonderful fresh supply of chicken on an ongoing basis, whether that's traditionally reared or organic. I like to use organic. So for this particular dish, I've used chicken drumsticks and thick chicken thighs. I've got one pre-cooked already because the process here takes quite a while. I marinate it overnight. Now I'm going to start off with the marination process. The thing with wine, when you're cooking with wine, is you want to burn out and burn off the alcohol, particularly if your children are having it. So I'm bringing this up to a very, very high heat. And then once it's kind of warmed through and we've got a good temperature, I'm then going to marinate the chicken. So in here we have the red wine, which is cooled down. So I've brought it to the boil, reduced it, cooled it down. I add that into my chicken. I've got some diced carrots. I've got some garlic. I've got a little bit of fresh herbs in there as well. And I leave that in the fridge overnight. That's it, done. Now what you're going to do afterwards is you're going to reserve the vegetables which will be used. I'm going to be doing a roux, but I'm going to go through that whole process with you now. So in a hot pan, I am going to use my old reliable rapeseed oil. Again, comes back to wanting to achieve a much higher temperature here. Olive oil burns at low temperatures, this doesn't. Have all your kitchen tools and bits and pieces. I have here my chicken. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to fry that off. And there are lots of different ways of doing this, but this is a kind of my foolproof way of doing a coq au vin. So again, the important thing here is to have really good heat. Now I like to put a little bit of salt on this as well because it'll crisp the skin up ever so slightly. And people very often say that men can't multitask. They can. There's our wine. So that's really just to give you an idea of what needs to be done beforehand to burn off the alcohol. I'm going to just flip these around. I want that skin to crisp up, and it's crisping up really nicely here. So the next thing I have here is once I actually have those seared off, I'm going to put them into the oven for about 20 minutes just to cook through. And then I'm going to start with my bacon, mushrooms, celery, and my carrots. Okay, so a bit more temperature there. Leave that in there. And I'm going to put that back on the heat. And in here, I'm going to put a little bit more of my rapeseed oil. And I'm going to fry off the rashers. So I've got streaky rashers here, streaky bacon. Again, I'm going to put that up at a high heat. Again, those are crisping up nicely. These are really beautiful. And bearing in mind, these have been marinating overnight as well. Again, important to have a lot of heat in there. Okay. So, good bit of heat in there in the rashers as well. I like to use dry cured rashers. With traditionally cured rashers, you pump a brine, and in those brines solution, you've got antioxidants and ascorbates, and what that does, it retains the moisture value in the bacon. So when you go to fry it, you lose all that moisture. You could lose between 15 and 20% of the weight. Whereas dry cured, it's dried with natural salts, sugars, you rub it into the muscle, and you let it cure for 4 or 5 days. You actually lose weight during that curing process, probably about 15, 20%. It's not the most commercially advantageous to the supplier, but it's much better for the consumer. My parents set up a business called Rudd's Bacon back in the 80s. We were pig farmers, and that's how we started doing it commercially. And we got great support from the likes of Fergal Quinn from Super Quinn. So back in about 1985, we were supplying most supermarkets back in Ireland as pig farmers. So I'm going to reduce the heat back down here. So they're cooking off quite nicely. In we go with the celeries. In we go with the mushrooms. And I'm going to add a little knob of butter in there as well, and that gives it a nice little bit of flavour. Bit of pepper, bit of salt. Very often when you're cooking, and if you taste when you're going along and you find, oh, you know what, it's missing something, what is it? Tiny bit of salt will carry that flavour, and then all of a sudden, bingo, you've got the right flavour combination. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to make a roux. So this is going to be the sauce for the coq au vin. So in here we go for the butter. Now, there is a rule of thumb when you're cooking or making a roux, that you have equal parts butter and flour. So if I'm putting in, let's say, 80 grams of butter, I'm putting in 80 grams of flour, and then I'm going to put 800 millilitres of liquid. So it's 888. You just add an extra zero. So in here, we've got our flour. Now, a little trick with flour. When you're making a roux, there's 80 grams in here. If you toast that in the oven at about 200 degrees for 10 minutes, that cooks the flour out, which means when you go to make your roux, it's actually cooked off really quickly. So again, straight in here to the roux. I'm going to mix that around. Here we go. Now that's starting to bubble away, and that's cooking out nicely. I want to get rid of all those lumps. Give that a little bit of a mix, and this will be a lovely combination of flavors. And then what I'm going to add into my roux there now, I'm going to add in the wine which I have reserved from the marinade. So again, that's going to bubble away, and you can see this thick consistency there. That's thickening up really nicely, and it's important. What I want to do is I want to cook that out. If the flour is pre-baked in the oven, this will cook out really, really quickly. And then add in the reserved vegetables. There we go. I'm going to turn the heat down there, and then in we go with our chicken, and that's going to cook off in the oven for approximately 45 minutes at 160 degrees. So I'm going to, over we go, leave that down, and you've got your beautiful coq au vin here. Again, you want to cook that out and then check the flavour and the consistency as well. But that's a really nice consistency there, it's thick enough. And then that makes sure the chicken is well coated. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to remove that. I'm going to serve up here as well. So leave all of that here. Now, Bouquet garni, what I had in there with the chicken that was marinating, which is now cooking, I've got a little bit of string, and I've got some fresh herbs, I've got some thyme, I've got some parsley, I've got some lovely rosemary. You could do it like that, or you could do it in a little muslin bag as well. Either or either, and I'm going to leave that in there. Clean as you go along in the kitchen, always a good idea. And I'm going to put that into the oven, and I'm going to cook that off. Here we go. So I'm just going to wipe this down. No, I've got this here, it's fine. Yeah, I'm going to take this out of the oven, which is beautiful. That's been cooking there for 40 minutes. This is my favorite casserole dish. This is my grandmother's noni's casserole dish. This must be about 60 years old. I've had it since the early 90s, and I absolutely love it. So in here we have these beautiful flavors. I'm going to taste a little of this coq au vin. Here we have that lovely Bouquet garni. Oh my God, the flavors there are just immense. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to serve that up in the middle of the table, bit of crusty bread. You could also serve it up with some mashed potato as well. So here we go. Oh, look at those beautiful, beautiful chicken legs here. It's absolutely stunning. And I'd say maybe about 2 pieces per person. Here we go. Leave that down there. And I'm going to clean the side of the plate. And I can serve that with some mashed potato. And I'm going to use a little bit of basil over the top of that. And hey presto, we've got our beautiful, beautiful coq au vin seasoned with a little bit more pepper and some lovely creamy mashed potato. And here we go, a beautiful dish.